As I've mentioned in the past, most financial systems do not fail suddenly. They weaken gradually, long before visible collapse appears. The system usually begins producing warning signs. Liquidity deteriorates, flexibility shrinks, pressure amplifies, optionality declines, and resilience slowly weakens underneath the surface. The problem is, most households are not monitoring the system closely enough to detect the signals early. And by the time visible instability appears, the underlying deterioration has often been building for months or years. Dynamic systems almost always produce warning signals before failure occurs. For example, shrinking liquidity reserves, increasing debt service pressure, declining monthly surplus, rising leverage sensitivity, or worsening flexibility metrics. None of these individually guarantee collapse, but together they begin revealing a weakening system structure. And this is critically important because fragility is often detectable long before instability becomes obvious externally. One of the most dangerous warning signs is rising amplification sensitivity. This is where degree of combined leverage becomes extremely important. Because rising DCL means small disruptions now create larger outcomes. The system becomes more sensitive, more fragile, and more difficult to stabilize. And often, this deterioration occurs gradually enough that households normalize it psychologically, until eventually, even minor pressure creates major instability. One of the least visible but most important warning signals is declining optionality, because fragile systems slowly lose flexibility, maneuverability, and future decision capacity. At first, the household still appears stable externally, but internally, the number of good future choices begins shrinking. And once optionality collapses far enough, recovery becomes dramatically more difficult. As systems weaken, warning signals eventually become behavioral. This is one of the most important transitions in financial deterioration. At first, the pressure is mathematical, but eventually stress rises, emotional bandwidth shrinks, short-term thinking increases, and decision quality begins deteriorating. This creates a dangerous secondary effect, because once behavior deteriorates, the system often begins amplifying its own instability. And this is why resilient structures matter so much. They preserve not only financial stability, but psychological stability as well. Strong systems are monitored continuously, because systems that are not monitored eventually become difficult to control. This is why dashboards matter, not for aesthetics, but for operational visibility. Monitoring liquidity, leverage, solvency, surplus, optionality, and resilience allows deterioration to become visible before instability becomes dangerous. And early detection preserves flexibility. The most important insight from this episode is this: failure is usually gradual, systems weaken before they fail, and long before visible instability appears, the system often produces warning signals, which means financial resilience is not simply about reacting well to crisis. It is about detecting deterioration early enough to preserve future choices, because early detection preserves optionality, and optionality preserves resilience. In the next episode, we'll move from monitoring the system to actively operating it. Because strong financial systems do not simply survive passively. They are monitored, adjusted, positioned, and strategically managed through time. And ultimately, resilience requires operation.